The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devotie. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Cox-Antwi. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldrich. President Green.
Present.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Oldenburg.
I can't either. I can't hear.
I can't hear.
Those on mine can't hear.
Go to the back and ask them to hear them.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Who's controlling the phone? Got it on mute.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Cox-Antwi.
I can't hear them. I can hear you, Pam. I'm assuming they're roll call calling.
You keep calling around.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd.
Can somebody?
Alderman Aldrich. Alderman Oldenburg.
Hey, sweetie.
Hey, we can see you. We're trying to get the volume worked out, so we can't hear you all and you can't hear us, so we're working on that.
All right, thank you.
All righty.
Thanks, Pam.
You're welcome. I was like, I see mouths moving, but I don't hear anything coming out.
We're having a few technical difficulties on our end. Apologies to those who are online at the moment. We can't hear you and are trying to figure that out.
Okay.
We just heard you.
Tom, can you
Alderman-
try speaking?
You talking.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
There we go.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Cox-Antwi. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Cox-Antwi. Alderwoman Keys. We have 11 present.
Did you present?
Alderwoman Sanye.
Present.
12 present.
A quorum being present will be led in an opening reflection by City of St. Louis Treasurer Adam Lane in honor of National Financial Literacy Month.
Good morning to everyone, especially those who call St. Louis home. My name is Adam Lane, and I have the pleasure of serving as a treasurer of the beautiful city of St. Louis. I want to thank the Board of Aldermen for having me. I want to thank you, President Green, and all the staff here at the Board of Aldermen that make our city's legislative process possible. I want to wish everyone a happy Financial Literacy Month, a time we take every year to put emphasis on increasing financial literacy, promoting financial well-being, and ensuring access to the financial tools necessary for everyone, all not some, to realize economic success. My vision is that we have a city and its citizens financially fit, and I'm proud of the work that we've been doing in our Office of Financial Empowerment to ensure just that over the years. We've been able to support tens of thousands of St. Louisans get banked for the first time, begin their home buying journey, increase their credit scores, and grow their economic potential. With our focus on whole home financial literacy, we've been able to open over 20,000 bank accounts for young people in St. Louis in kindergarten, meaning that they'll have 13 years of a positive banking relationship. All this is in efforts to break generational cycles of poverty and narrow the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Last year, we kicked off our inaugural St. Louis Saves Week, which had the goal of making sure that St. Louis residents and employees right here in City Hall and across all of our city departments could set realistic savings goals and get the support needed to meet those goals. Over 150 city employees took the pledge and collectively committed to saving over $700,000 to buy a home, to reduce debt, to care for their loved ones, to support their children's futures, or to simply start a good financial habit. I appreciate them all, not only for taking the pledge, but for trusting me in my office and my team to support them along their individual journey. But a budgeting workshop can't undo decades of redlining. A savings workshop can't erase discriminatory lending practices that saturate longstanding policies perpetuated by financial institutions to this day. A financial counseling session in April is not going to repair my roof that was destroyed last May. 1 month in April every year cannot combat historical disinvestment in St. Louis's most marginalized communities. St. Louisans are waking up every day unsure of what the economic burden of tomorrow will bring. I can create the most perfect budget, but if our overseas war is going to bring gas prices from $2.69 to $4.69 overnight, going over budget is not me being bad with money. Going over budget is me making sure that I can get to work and that my kids can get to school. When tariffs increase the cost of essential products and rising costs make the price of a grocery basket increase by a rate that outpaces my earnings, spending that extra money to make sure my family can eat doesn't mean that I'm bad at managing my resources. It means that my country is hindering my ability to live. Trying to survive in an economy where costs are going up exponentially and wages remain unchanged is an economy that sets a majority of us up for failure. Sometimes this financial outlook looks hopeless, and I am hopeful when I see our local legislators like you all advocating for increased wages for our city employees. I am encouraged when I see our city legislators advocate for a livable wage in our city, in our state, and in our country so that working families don't have to struggle to meet their basic needs. I am hopeful when I see that this board has a champion in Shamim Clark Hubbard who advocated for a basic guaranteed income program at the city, and her colleagues in this room supported to allow us to put a program forth that supported over 500 St. Louisans with deep financial needs. I thank this board for the work that you have all put in time and time again to make sure that the people of St. Louis can live their best economic lives. I thank you for your advocacy here in our state capitol to ensure that policies put forward do not set households back and that decisions are made to make sure that our citizens can live at an economic advantage. April may just be a month, but it allows us to build momentum for a movement. And like I said, I am hopeful through the advocacy and legislation put forward by this body that the work in our office, the work in our local financial institutions, our community organizations, and our partnerships are going to move the conversation about economic prosperity forward. I am very hopeful and I'm very thankful, and I thank you, all of you here legislating on a daily basis for St. Louis citizens. And I appreciate all the work that you all do, and I thank you for giving me this time here to speak to you all today. Thank you, and happy Financial Literacy Month.
We can dispense with line item 4. Are there any introduction of honored guests? Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Today, as my honor guest, I want to have the hardworking men and women of our fire department, especially individuals, I got to make sure I get it right, from Local 73 that continues to make sure that we are safe every single day. Their job is very thankless, but it is a great appreciation for all the great work that they do. So if the Board of Aldermen can have the firefighters as my honored guests on the first day, I would greatly appreciate it.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Any further introduction of honored guests? Seeing none, we can also dispense with line item 6 as there is no approval of the minutes. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, C, and D of the agenda. The copy has been placed in the Google Drive for review.
We have no bills on any of our informal calendars, so we may dispense with line items 8 through 11. First reading of board bills.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 12, reference to committee of board bills.
We have none.
Dispense with line item 13, second reading report of standing committees.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 14, report of special committees.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 15, perfection consent calendar.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 16A, board bills for perfection.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 16B, report of engrossment.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 17, third reading and final passage of board bills consent.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 18A, third reading and final passage of board bills.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 18B, reported the finally passed and signed by the president.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 19, first reading of resolutions in reference to committee.
Resolution number 1, introduced by President Green, Alderman Cone, and Alderman Aldrich. Board of Aldermen rules.
Aldermen from the 14th, you are recognized on the first reading of resolution number 1.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to perfect Resolution 1.
Do you want to ask for
I ask for unanimous consent on Resolution number 1.
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to now perfect Resolution number 1.
Adopt resolution number 1.
Adopt Resolution number 1.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt resolution number 1. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Resolution number 1 that is in front of us is the proposed, it will be the document that we govern with our rules at the Board of Aldermen. I do want to thank Deputy Director Chief Ingracia for sending out kind of a fact sheet that I'll read about. This year, there's not many rule changes. If anything, there's none at all. What we did, if anything, we improved consistencies when it comes to the rules, as well as removing crossover reference of numbers of rules that recognize the rules and changes. We correct some mechanics and some small errors that was in our rules and added some language to the appendix, as well as we're allowing for bills and resolutions to be submitted both either through Microsoft Word or Google Docs. I am going to go through a couple of the rules that was just updated, not necessarily changed, but updated to be a little bit more clear. So on Rule 6 that talks about our regular and special meetings, we added extra regular meetings were added to provide a mechanics for additional meetings to be added to the session calendar that will move the full agenda forward, as well as we included language around special meetings are now limited to an agenda for only urgent and currently defined items. We know we called a lot of special meetings last year, just clarifying that if a special meeting is needed, it is due to urgency. Rule 19 with standing committees. In legislation and rules, we added language that will only engross bills that have been changed via amendment, committee substitute, or floor substitute. And there's some explanation with that under Rule 28 or 68 and 70. In Rule 20 on Personnel and Administration Committee, we added a provision was added to clarify that the Personnel Administration Committee serves as a human resource authority of the Board of Aldermen. As we do the hiring and firing at the Board of Aldermen, we are kind of that human resource. If there is an issue with a staff member, any staff member can always come to personnel to make that complaint. But just to be very clear that the Personnel and Administrative Committee is the human resource body of the Board of Aldermen. Rule 22 in committee meeting order of business and rules. We added that written testimony items may be addressed prior to the vote. We didn't say shall. There has been some issues during committee where a written testimony is skipped, not necessarily on purpose. I would say I've been one of those individuals that have done it on accident, but we just want to make sure that the written testimony and that people's input when it comes to the testimony is actually being heard on those pieces of legislation, as well as on resolutions that come in front of the committee. That written testimony is an item that may be addressed prior to the vote. Rule 24, committee subs, it fixed a mistake and linked section 2 and 3 together in that rule. It was just trying to combine those. They kind of overlap, saying the same thing. Rule 68, perfection. Perfection bills was only being referred to legislation rules if they had been amended or were perfected via committee on the floor substitute prior to our rules. There is charter language in Article 4, Section 15, that amends to be engrossed. All amendments adopted shall be incorporated with the bill. All engrossments under this section of the committee shall report to the written such engrossment. So again, this goes back to if there is a change to a bill on the floor, it is in the charter that technically we're supposed to engross bills. If there's any changes, bills will only be engrossed if a change is made during kind of the amendment process on the floor. Rule 70 talks about the engrossment, where we eliminate the requirement that all perfected bills are engrossed and instead confronts the charter language by limiting engrossment bills that to be amended after its introduction. Rule 71, no amendments after perfection or engrossment unless adding language that process will remain the same whether the bill is either perfected. And then in the Appendix D, under the media access, we added language that says any credentials for media of denial approval has to go to the legislation and rules instead of personnel administration committee. When we passed the rules last year and we came up with rules for our credentials for media, we had them going to personnel administration, but also the approval of the credentials go to legislation and rules. So we just wanted to be consistent that it should be only one committee if there's a denial or approval of the rules, and not trying to separate them with two different committees. And with that, that was the small changes that we made in the rules. Again, if anything, it was more cleanup. There's no new rule that was added to our rule book that changes the structure of the Board of Aldermen, but just clarify some things that wasn't clear in our rule book. And with that, I would open up for any questions from my colleagues. And I believe we have some amendments as well.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
So you spoke so fast that you couldn't hear most of what you were saying, but I want to understand again what you are saying about in the engrossment of...
Alderwoman from the 12th, can you pause for 1 second? We're having trouble hearing you again, but we think it's an issue on our end. If you can just pause for 1 second.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, weird. Okay. Alderman from the 3rd.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion that we recess for 10 minutes while we try to figure out the...
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 4th, that we recess until we get the sound system issues worked out here for about 10 minutes. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Cox-Antwi. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Cox-Antwi. Alderman Browning. 13 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. We are going to go into a short recess. My understanding STL TV needs to reboot the system to try to get our sound working. So should only happen for about 10 minutes or so. And we are back. We will pick up with where we left off, which was with the Alderwoman from the 12th. Oh, sorry. We need to first take a motion to return from recess. Second. It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 1st, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we return from recess. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Aye. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devoti.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Aye. Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Cox-Antwi. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Present. Oh, aye, I'm sorry.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Cox-Antwi. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. 12 aye votes, 1 no.
With that, we are returned from recess, and we will pick up where we left off, which is with the Alderwoman from the 12th. So, Alderwoman from the 12th, you're recognized.
Yes, I was asking if the Alderman from the 14th would yield regarding the rules.
The Alderman from the 14th yield to the Alderwoman from the 12th.
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
And I also want to say, I keep hearing chatter in the background, so I don't know if that somebody has their mic open or not. And all of a sudden, I don't see the board anymore. Okay. Anyway, can you hear me?
I can hear
Yes.
you, Alderwoman.
Okay. I don't see you, Alderman, at all. So I just see 2 pictures of me up here. But anyway, so I wanted to ask you a question regarding your statements about the rules changing with engrossment, but you were speaking so fast I couldn't understand. What is the change for the engrossment that you say is occurring in the rules that as they are presented before us today?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question. So what we're doing is, when it comes to engrossment, is actually going to be following the charter language that is in Section 4, Article 4, Section 5, that says.
I know where it is.
Well, do you want to continue?
I'm just saying I understand that.
Well, if you don't, I know you may
read.
not, but it's for the general public that maybe don't know what it is. So if I could continue.
Okay.
Charter language, again, in Article 4, Section 5, it talks about when it comes to engrossment, that engrossment only happens when and it's amended, the bill's amended. So what we're going to do moving forward is only do engrossment when a bill is either amended from its original form, so a committee sub, or if it's amended on the floor, or those would be the only times that we will now request that the bill go to engrossment to actually follow what the charter says when it comes to engrossment.
Okay, so other than that, there will be no checking to see if the bills are correct if it's not a committee sub or a floor sub. Is that what I'm understanding?
If it's a committee sub, that would be part of engrossment. If it's a floor sub, that also, anytime that the bill changes from its original form, committee sub, floor sub would go through the engrossment process. If the bill comes out of committee as its current process and go to the floor as its current process and is never changed, it will not go through the engrossment process.
Okay, and I want to say to you, that's a big mistake. I'm a rules person. The best rules we've had for the last 10 years was when I was the chair of rules. Anybody that was here will tell you. And the reason why is because there were so many mistakes The committees don't do a good job of reading the board bills. Of course, though, if you just sign it without having hearings, it doesn't make any difference, which is what we've been doing. But the real reason of having engrossment with all the bills was because there were so many mistakes. In fact, while I was the chair, we had to bring Dale Rusat and Mr. Wilson in, not Jamie, Mr. Wilson in to have a meeting with us to just go over the rules and I mean the bills that were had so many errors in them. And in fact, the most errors came from HUD. When Joe Rody was the chair, every other thing, we would have pages and pages of mistakes. And that is an embarrassment when it gets passed and we have everybody sign off into it. And then there are so many things. You really do need to not just only have an engrossment committee, they need to go over it and they need to have the meeting like twice to make sure everything is right. And I'll give you an example, the current soccer stadium bill. And Bill Kuling and who was the other person that came before us? I think it was Dave. Well, our former Dave Sweeney might have been the other lawyer, but both of them. And it came out of committee with so many mistakes that over the weekend we had to work to redo that bill and correct all the mistakes and errors. So you may think that is a good idea, but what would be a better idea is that you actually had a committee that met and went over those rules and cleaned them up. So many times engrossment caught that we perfected a bill and then third read it and it had not gone to E&A. So it was not legal. And I had a whole string of bills that we had to reintroduce and redo because it was not legal. So I think this is, I know, and it doesn't say you can only do it. It says that's when it's done. But the reason why, and even before I came, when they used to do it the correct way, they had stopped doing it years ago. But when they originally put that into effect, it was to make sure that we had correct board bills that left out of the Board of Aldermen that we can be proud of. And the clerk and I worked, at that time, Clerk Kennedy and I worked a lot to make sure that that happened. And the committee that we had, we worked really hard. So I think that's a mistake to change the rules like that. But as I've seen the last year or so, we haven't had any rules meetings, people just signing off on stuff. But there are so many mistakes in our bills. There are so many things that are incorrect that if anybody takes this stuff to court, we're going to be an embarrassed group of people. So I think that's a mistake for that reason, not because I need to do it, but the Board of Aldermen needs to have a better appearance of what we put out, and that's correct. So just because it comes out of the committee, it should be correct. It should in committee be correct enough so that it could be signed by the president, but it's not. And we know that because just since you've been here, we had a whole bill come out that the alderman from the 4th sponsored about changing the excise and liquor licenses and the rules around excise. And from page 1, it had mistakes. So the bill's only as good as the committee. And the engrossment committee was something that was a final step to make sure that we were getting our bills right. If I had not caught it on the floor, because I do read a lot of the bills, that bill would have went into law and it would have meant absolutely nothing. And there's some that have done that because the committees do not read the bills. And if we're going to do that, I still think we need a final step of submitting it someplace to make sure it is correct. And if it's not going to be a committee, which it should be, then maybe our lawyer could spend his time going over those bills to make sure they're correct. But you should not have get rid of that. That is greatly needed. It's like getting rid of your tax account or something like that. So I am opposed to that for the reasons that our committees do not send good bills out that are correct. And we need somebody as a final kind of final authority to make sure they are correct. Thank you.
No, I agree, Alderwoman.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I agree. I know there's a kind of a commitment from the clerk and the staff to be, looking over these bills. And I know we're in a transition right now. But one thing that I agree with, as we move forward in this legislative session that I would love to see, between our legal clerk and our legislative researcher is, and it's something that I asked to be on the agenda without going to detail personnel, is how do we have our legal work with our clerks to be able to catch the bills on the front end, as we have a legal clerk as well as a legal researcher to actually be helping out with the clerk. And hopefully there will be a deputy clerk coming very soon to catch these on the front end, even before we get to a place of the bill actually changing. So that is definitely on my radar as somebody at the board, to make sure that legal is looking at these on the front end with our clerk, and hopefully be full staff soon with filling the deputy clerk as well.
So I will tell you that the clerk has enough to do, and that's going to be hard to do. And what I'm telling you is when we have a lot of new aldermen, they don't know what a good board bill looks like. Also, we had the problem that they put a lot of blanks in board bills that should have been filled in. And I started making them come back and fill them in. These are all the things. We're a legislative body. And people may not like it, but we're supposed to go by rules and be fair. We're supposed to be accurate. And we're supposed to present something to the public that we are going to be proud of. I can look at these last 3 years and I can guarantee you a lot of our legislation we are not proud of, just with the mistakes that are in them. And if we don't insist on having people look at them correctly and give a critical eye and make sure it presents the best foot forward for the board, shame on us. The president knows about it because when I was the chair, I made her my vice chair, and we did go over stuff. Who else? Nobody else here, I guess, was on it. But it was also a good place for new people to come and learn the rules. And I took time to try to teach new people the rules so that you're not sitting around here going along with stuff that doesn't even make any sense at all because you don't know anything. You just want to be the chair of a committee and you don't know anything. And so I find it really sad. It's hard for me to sit down here and watch this Board of Aldermen operate because we do not operate as a legislative body. And we are a joke out in the community oftentimes when people talk to me because we don't get it right. And we're not about trying to be inclusive and to be fair and to do good legislation. We make a deal, but we don't know what half of the stuff means. We don't know when there's a big blank in the middle of a document that was supposed to be filled in. And Del Rusak got really upset with me when I brought him over. And then later we had the conversation and he was like, well, we didn't know it was this many mistakes. Well, before it even comes to the Board of Aldermen, SLDC should be making sure that the board bills are right. But they didn't, and they didn't care about leaving gaps. And then Joe Rody and his committee didn't care about it. They didn't read it. This is not the first set of board members that didn't read things, but they were shocked because they tried to make the Rules Committee like a punishment, and it became the most powerful committee, not because it was trying to punish people, but it was trying to make the Board of Aldermen have accurate legislation. And I don't think we should pass that off onto the clerk. He or she has enough to do as the assistant clerk, but maybe we can, since we got a lawyer and assistant, maybe we could give them more to do by having them go over it if we're not going to have the committee. But I really would prefer that we have a committee. And it's, as I said before, it's especially important for young aldermen who do not understand what the rules say or need a way to find out. Because when they see the application of the board bills and see where the mistakes are and see how that works, it helps them to learn the rules. So I am opposed to what we're doing. I think we're going to just open it up for more mistakes. I have no more further questions.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Will the Alderman from the 14th yield for questions?
Alderman from the 14th yields questions from the Alderman from the 2nd.
I do.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Alderman, can you refresh my memory on the rule change you're proposing around consent calendars and board bills that are adopted unanimously out of committee? They automatically are sent to the consent calendar. Can you just walk me through some of the thinking and the process behind that?
Yes, thank you for that, Alderman. I haven't brought the amendment forward. I know it's on everybody's desk. The amendment would add a...
Alderman, I think we need to have that amendment before us in order to discuss it.
Oh,
I thought it was part of the resolution. My apologies.
No, it is not.
All right, understood. I'll withdraw my line of questioning, Madam President, but while I have the floor, I was hoping that I could move to adopt an amendment. I move to adopt Amendment 1 to Resolution number 1.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 2nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 4th, that we adopt Amendment number 1. Alderman from the 2nd, you may proceed.
Thank you. It's a pretty straightforward amendment to our rules. I think you should all be pretty familiar with it. It was something I attempted to do toward the end of our last session, and that's simply to amend said resolution, Chapter 13, voting majorities, adding Appendix B, with the addition of a new rule, B6, to be read as follows. The passage of board bills for the appropriation of Rams settlement funds shall require the affirmative vote of 2/3 of all members of the Board of Aldermen. I think this is an important amendment to adopt. I think it forces agreement. We often hear that this is once in a generation, once in a lifetime, transformative money. I think this rule embodies thoughtfulness, allows us to have broad agreement. I think it prevents an abuse of power. It says that we've got 10 wards representing and their representatives coming to an agreement on what is very important money. And it puts us all on Front Street in terms of being accountable to say that we have consensus on where these critical funds should be spent. I think there's governments often at all levels deliberate on 2/3 vote and the importance that it brings to the issue or to the use. I think a simple way to think about it is 50% is most people agree, 2/3 is a large majority agrees. And shame on us if we can't get there in terms of this forced compromise to ensure that 2/3 of this body decides where those transformative once in a generation funds go. I have nothing further at the moment.
Any further discussion on amendment number 1? Any further? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Thank you. Alderman from the 2nd, if you would yield.
The Alderman from the 2nd yield to the Alderwoman from the 12th.
I will.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Alderman. I told you before, I didn't support this amendment because I've been really disappointed in how we've had 2 pots of transformative money. We had almost $500 million of ARPA funds that we changed the original agreement of how we would spend that. And to this day, I can't tell you where that money is. It's someplace floating out there. And on any given day, I hear we got 100 million left over. I hear, no, we don't. But because we took out the aldermen out of the process, we don't have any idea of what that money was spent on. I tell you what I don't see. I don't see new grocery stores. I don't see a hardware store that was in our original bill. I don't see any of that. So I hear what you're saying, but we gave $30 million of the Rams fund off of the top to the convention center like it was nothing. I do know where $15 million of the ARPA fund is because we came along and gave another $15 million of the ARPA fund, which I was opposed and questioned the former 8th Ward Alderwoman, who is now the mayor, about how could we bring more money when the first original 30 million was supposed to be all that they asked. Then they went over budget. And so that's the only thing I can tell you of the 2 pots of money that really we spent stuff on, and we didn't have, I don't know if we had 10 votes for that ARPA fund, because that was ridiculous to me to this day to give $45 million to a building that when I got here was not here, that we built while I was here, and we spent a lot of money on it. So I do understand your financial concern that it be spent in a correct way, but I find that the only things that people seem to be able to agree on is these large items downtown. And I know you come from a banking background, and so the money is sitting there. And I've told you why I want it. I want to tear down the raggedy buildings in North St. Louis that have sat for years and years and years, that are LRA, that the aldermen did not create, that I did not have. My original ward, if you go back and look at the original comparisons when I got elected, they would talk about the 16th ward and the 20th ward, both high silk stocking wards. Now I've picked up all these other wards that were a lot different than me. So now all of a sudden I went from 20 vacant properties to then I got the first ward, and it was 100, 200 vacant properties. And now I got what used to be the fourth ward. And I got like 2,300 vacant properties and lots. So now they're not all properties, but no citizen in the city of St. Louis should be sitting or living by, rather, vacant properties. And just to point out, and people worried about how the money is spent downtown, the press pointed out that there was a tree growing on top of the Millennial Hotel, and that made that blighting. Then Alderwoman from the 13th knows this, myself now, Alderwoman from the 11th, in North St. Louis, citizens, no matter how nice your neighborhood is, at any given time, you'd have a LRA property that needs to be torn down, that sits there forever and doesn't get torn down. So when you talk about putting this money aside, because most of the people who live south don't have to deal with this, they don't know that that's an important issue, okay? That if we think it's important to tear down a building downtown that has one little tree growing on the top of it, that is very important to tear down the properties that the city gets through the LRA process, and then let's sit in your community for years, destroying your property value, destroying your ability to get taxes. And so you don't have that urgency. And so that's why I don't agree with the amendment, because there's nothing that says we're going to set some money aside. Like, let's take that $15 million that we gave of an ARPA fund and set that aside for Rams to tear down the vacant properties in North St. Louis. Then I can hear that. But just to say you got to have 10, because what I've heard oftentimes down here is that at the Board of Aldermen is that aldermen from other parts of the city are tone deaf about what the urgencies are. They hear, oh, we got to fix downtown up. But they hear, oh, that's just North St. Louis. And so they don't care. And so when you want to just put that money up and put it so it's out of reach, so that we can't spend it with the needs that we have that are urgent, that makes me not be able to support it. And just wanted you to understand that and to explain to me, how do I say that and then go back to the 12th ward and say, hey, I said we got to have 10 votes for this. And literally during the tornado, and every year, I want to tell you, I drive my ward from when it was 20th ward, when it was only 3.5 neighborhoods. And we voted the highest in the city, Democratic, and one of the highest, tied with the 16th, 23rd, 12th in the city overall. To now, the votes that we used to get in my 3 neighborhoods, we don't get in my 12 neighborhoods, because my middle class and upper class population, upper income, left with the way the city was run. But I drive it to turn in every year. These are the properties, are LRA mostly, but private properties that need to be tore down. And we used to get them tore down. And then with the Jones administration, we didn't. But with the tornado, they came down on people's houses. That's how important it is. They came down. And I saw on the news, I don't know, a year ago, about you had a vacant house and the people were going in. And I was just thinking to myself, a vacant house, woo, if I would love to have that problem again. Because I used to be that person. I was that person when I got elected. We did not have vacant houses. We were not in, when the census came out, if you go back and look in the 90s, we were not in the low income census data. And so, but I got a different ward that I represent now. How do I tell the people, oh, we're going to set that money aside and let 10 people decide that that's important, that we tear down these properties when we haven't decided that all along? And I begged the former mayor to put that money in there. So how do I do that? That's what I want to ask you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. It's a fair question, and it's certainly an understandable conversation that you're having. I would argue, to your point, that saying that you felt like the Board of Aldermen was cut out of ARPA dollars. I would think setting up this construct in our rules puts the Board of Aldermen squarely in power to decide where these funds go. On a side, you have my vote to prioritize the demolition of vacant properties and the board up of vacant properties as the first dollars out in this. And I guarantee you and I can get 10 votes for that no matter what. So I do think that this sets up a construct to exactly have power, put the Board of Aldermen at the center of this decision to say, hey, we got to get 10 votes. Here's where we should prioritize these funds first. And I think through compromise, we can get that agreement pretty quickly. I look back at the vote that we took on originally deploying some of these RAM settlement proceeds for tornado relief instantly off the top. I think it was unanimous. So I think when there is urgency and the topic is of a matter of grave concern, like the issues you're speaking about in your community, I don't hesitate to think that we can't get the 2/3 vote here, because it is that important, and an overwhelming majority of Board of Aldermen members would agree to that. And I think it also, I'm not suggesting a set aside of funds at the moment. I think we should have uses for them. I think there should be some savings associated with the overall pot of dollars, because we are going to need some operational help in the out years, but that's part of the conversation. All I think we need to do here is this sets us up to take a prudent step, and really put the Board of Aldermen in power to say, hey, well, we've got to get a 2/3 majority down here. So in order to do that, here's how we should be prioritizing these very funds.
I hear you. And you know what? You're one of the few people that when you've given me your word, we worked well together in a previous board. Not since this board's been down here. In a previous board, we worked really well. We had 28 aldermen and a different president. So I hear you. So part of me wants to work with you because I do believe it. But the other part of me is just, I'm disgusted looking at my neighborhoods, and I'm disgusted that we give $30 million off of the top to the Rams. I'm sorry, to the convention center. I call it the Ram Stadium.
The ARPA dollars.
Right. No, I'm talking about the 30 million we gave off of the Ram settlement. We gave 30 off the top. Okay. Yep. And so, but I could never get the former mayor to hear, because although she talks about, I grew up in North St. Louis, she did not, because I lived in South St. Louis. She grew up on Shenandoah, because I lived on Clem, and she did not. So people don't tend to care about neighborhoods in which they don't live in sometimes. I'm very fortunate. I lived in the Central Quarter when I came here. I lived in South St. Louis for 9 years. I've been in North St. Louis for a number of years. Didn't grow up here, but it's given me a sensitivity about the difference in how you get services and things like that. From even the press talking about botanical gardens or the Shaw neighborhood or whatever neighborhoods, and North St. Louis, as though we don't have neighborhoods. Okay, so that's their way of saying, and that's where those Negroes live, and that's how they deserve. And they don't want to say that. That is what I feel like it is. Okay, so I think people are desensitized, but coming down and we're going to change it, and we're not going to use seniority anymore. That's what they do to Black elected officials. When you get to be somebody, when you get the most education, the most experience, then we change the rules. That has been not my experience, it's been the Black experience. What they do to Black people is, the 20th ward is voting high and they're building $50-60 million of stuff. Let's tear that ward up and put it into all the wards that were not performing. That's been my experience down here, okay? So I do want to be with you, and I really don't like the way we've managed, the people who've been down here managed the ARPA funds. As I said, we can put $1 million to take people to get abortions. I'm pro-choice for abortion, and I used to give money to Planned Parenthood, but I wasn't for putting $1 million to drive people across the state across the state line to get abortions. And it's a lot of things that we just put the money in and it hasn't been spent. And I think that we're going to come to a time and energy when it's going to come up and say, okay, we haven't spent this money and now we're going to put it downtown. And that's the go-to in my experience. When I came downtown, none of the stuff that's down here now, the problems that you're having with Washington Street, that wasn't a problem when I got here because there was no Washington Street. And one of the things we did is we put all the money downtown and built up Washington Street and then surprised us the young people go there. I was opposed to it when Mayor Clark proposed it back in the 90s, saying you need to spread this money out so that people can go other places. I've watched put just billions of dollars downtown, yet our downtown is still saying, oh, we need some more of that money. After they got the 30 million from the RAM settlement and then another 15 million for the ARPA funds, the people who are the proponents of downtown said, well, but we want to partner with North St. Louis. And I said, but first we got to take 45 million off the top and give that to North St. Louis because the convention center, the last time I looked, is downtown. So I watched the money really carefully, okay? And I've been putting together little odds and ends of where the money is. And we do have a lot of ARPA money that has not been spent. So, like I said, you have been very fair. And when you've given your word, you've kept it. I could probably not speak to 4 other people down here, but I would say that. But you are one of them. And I do not want to see this money piecemealed into nothing. But I do not want to see this money given to downtown anymore. Because go get that $45 million from the convention center. And go get those billions of dollars. And I'm not against downtown. I actually want downtown to thrive, but not at the expense of the public safety in North St. Louis. And that's where I'm at now. If there is a public safety issue that it didn't have to be a tornado. I know everybody said, oh, tornado, give the money. It shouldn't have been a tornado. It should have been, we got this LRA property, 6,000 or 7,000 parcels that we need to take care of. No community can absorb that and be a real community. If I took the 16th ward and combined it with the old 4th ward, you would be in over your head. You would be like, oh my Lord, because you wouldn't know what to do with it. I've been next door to it for many years, but we always kept it at bay. For me to now just have to look at the problems that are there, and it's for the last 3 years I've spent all my time. And so I don't want the money to just sit there. That's what I said. And I believe you that you would work to get the money. So I'm struggling right now is what I'm telling you. Okay. So I don't know. Let me get off because I'm struggling because I do believe you. You try to keep your word. That's what I'll tell you. Okay.
Thank you, Alderman.
I don't know. Tell me something else that would make me make a better decision.
Understood. I do understand, Alderman.
And so tell me again, if we put this up, then what is the point again? I want to hear it again.
Sure. I mean, I think the point is that this is sort of transformative money, the way everyone has been thinking about it. I think adding a higher level of voting approval makes it more important. I think it gives the Board of Aldermen the power and control of these funds that the mayor's office and others are going to have to work with us because they know we have to get to a 2/3 majority. I believe that it also sets the stage for compromise, ultimate compromise, which I think everybody wants on this. And within that compromise, Alderwoman is priority. And I can't speak for my colleagues, but I think I have where their minds are is in terms of priority. North City needs to be the top of the list. And let's agree on a good amount of money that goes there. A majority, right, of this money goes there. And the uses underneath that large sum. And I think I'll work with you hand in hand to ensure we get 10 votes, because I think it puts us in the driver's seat here at the board to in fact prioritize these dollars to first go to North St. Louis and to the vacant properties and to the community deterioration that you have to work with, Alderwoman.
And okay, so, but what about water? So when we first got the ARPA funds, one of my proposals was to take half of the ARPA funds and put toward the water. Okay. And nobody wanted to do that. To me, that was transformative. That touched everybody, every neighborhood. Water is something that is important. Now we're piecemealing water because the people in charge would not listen. Okay. But if we had put $250 million of that ARPA fund into it, and then with a bond issue, we would have had $500 million working on. There's not anybody at that Board of Aldermen that did not, their ward didn't need to see the water improve. And so we just went away. We didn't do that. We missed that opportunity because people who were running it, and it's like the children to me, get the keys to the house, and then they don't want to hear the parents when they say you got to pay the mortgage, insurance, the light and gas and things like that. So I don't discount water. Okay. That's still important to me.
Sure.
We all need it. So I'm not saying North St. Louis gets it all, but I'm saying some big things. I mean, we still need to do something with water. So
yeah, I would
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree with you. I think this just really sets up the construct for us to have those important conversations and make sure we prioritize those things that are important to you, your community, citywide infrastructure, water. I would argue those are at the top of everyone's list. At least I would assume so. So again, this is not debating where we're going to spend this money right now. This is setting up a construct that puts it in an ultimate level of importance and puts the Board of Aldermen in complete control, in my mind, of how these funds do in fact get prioritized and spent.
I'm going to trust you and I'm going to give you my vote and support it.
Thank you, Alderwoman. That means a lot to me. I appreciate it.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President. Board. I am in strong opposition to this rule amendment. I do think that 10 is good, and if we weren't in the specific circumstance we were, I would be supportive of it. I'm just really uncomfortable with us as a Board of Aldermen and as a city doing something that requires even more votes to send funds out while we have thousands of people who are still in tents. This rule came up before in last session, and we saw an outpour of folks from the community and got an outpour of communication from folks who were very opposed. I do think that some of the comments that came up I don't agree with. You know, I've been able to, especially carrying the last RAM settlement bill, have conversations with every single member of this board at this point about RAM settlement. And I do think that most of us definitely agree that some of the funds have to go to the tornado impacted areas and have to go to North City. I do not think we've reached a point of agreement on what that number is. And so my fear would be that we would pass this and then it would end up leaving a community that is devastated and has nothing. And if I had better evidence of us being able to kind of build consensus around those types of things, I would come to the table. I understand that the sponsor has said that, well, every time we've talked about RAM settlement funds for a tornado, you know, it's been a success. That's true and that's false. Before, when we talked about North City prior to a tornado, we could not come to on what North City to get. Alderwoman Tyus and Alderman Aldridge actually went back and forth on different amendments the last time we had the RAM settlement bill conversation, trying to figure out what that number could be. And I can tell you that there are people who felt very strongly and passionately about, having the conversation and trying to build consensus, but we could not get there for North City. And so for me, I just cannot vote for this in good conscience because I do not want people who are already waiting on resources. We have an Office of Recovery that is telling us at every budget meeting we're running out of money. They're saying that they do not have the funds. You know, they're about to run out very quickly and are looking forward to more funds coming that way. And this amendment could potentially put us in a gridlock. If we did not have the situation of the tornado, I would be like, okay, we can take all the time to figure this out, but I'm just really fearful that the outcome and the consequence of this could be that areas of our city who have long been waiting for investment and have long been waiting for this put them as a priority will have to wait even longer. And I would say that if we're very passionate about making sure that we have consensus on this, then we shouldn't limit it to consensus for just these funds, because again, I do think there are portions of our city that are waiting on every dollar and every part of relief that they could get. And they're going to receive this as, oh, the board now wants to build consensus, when we didn't try to build consensus with removing millions of dollars in ARPA funds. When we just moved millions of dollars for water, we didn't need consensus for that. And I think that's important because water needs those dollars and water needs those funds. So I wouldn't want us to do anything to hold, things that need the dollars up. And I would really caution us to, if we were to approve this today, the message that they may send to the public, and particularly members of the public that, again, just went through a very bitter cold winter, or just get into a summer and still don't have the amount of relief that they need. And our city's very own Office of Recovery is saying, hey, we really need some dollars soon, because our ability to continue to support operations and plan strategically and more long term is really tied to those dollars. So I do rise in strong opposition, and I would encourage many of my colleagues to do it. I do understand the sponsor's intentions, and I do think consensus is good, but I think it's dangerous to talk about consensus for one pool of money that folks who are, a tornado means you don't have anything, you don't have any funds. And again, I can say I haven't seen us been able to have that conversation, particularly about North City. I want to be clear. I think we can build a consensus on the other parts of the conversation. I think the last time we had this conversation, the reason that there was a committee substitute is because the saying was, well, what we can build consensus around is water. I'm very fearful of this stopping us, our ability to deploy funds to folks who are in need of every single dollar that they can get. That is my only hesitation for this. If we were under normal circumstances, or, perhaps didn't have a tornado, I would be able to, consider this a lot more. But I think for me, I just cannot take a vote on something that might make it harder to get resources to folks who have nothing at this moment. Thank you.
Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, would the Alderman from the 2nd yield for question?
The Alderman from the 2nd yield to the Alderman from the 14th.
I will.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you for bringing this amendment forward, Alderman. I know you attempted to do this last session and tried to get, I think, you're asking there'll be 10 and tried to get 10 votes last go around to try to be fair, but I get why you're bringing it. Now, when you think about, we got 250 in Rams Fund, and when I say thank you, not that I agree, I'm kind of stuck on where to go with the amendment, but at least for having the conversation. When you think about the 250 Rams Fund, do you have a vision of, as we have these conversations, of how much you think need to go to North St. Louis?
I think it's 100 million or north of 100 million of the 250 for sure.
Yeah. And I'll say I'm also stuck with it. I tend not to try to, not that I tend not, I think we don't always agree, me and the Alderwoman from the 12th. But one thing that I can agree is when me and you have had conversations, you have, kept your word. You are somebody who, I think, try to lead with integrity, at least on the things that we worked on. So I get what you're trying to get at with making sure that we're all on the same page with a Rams bill, because, but my fear, I guess, of maybe supporting it is how the last conversation happened. And I think the Alderwoman from the 12th and the Alderwoman from the 7th touched on it. Before there was a tornado, we couldn't even try to get a penny to Northside. We seen strategic actions that was being either from the Alderwoman from the 7th bill or another avenue of the Alderwoman from the 13th bill to strip out funds that would have went to the Northside and said only advocate for water, which I think the Alderwoman from the 12th even mentioned that nobody is against water. But it kind of feels, I think some people are a little burnt from that last conversation. It was probably one of the proudest moments, even though we didn't do anything, and I'm glad we didn't because of the tornado, but one of the best moments of working at the board, of having the Alderwoman from the 12th, seconding every amendment that I was bringing forward that was going to put money to Northside, understanding just the critical need that is there. And I'm sure folks that are older than me can talk about the disinvestment in North Side way before I was around. And the tornado has only made it even worse. And I fear that if we can't, and as a downtown alder, while I would love to see some go downtown, also know that, in my opinion, we need majority, like 115 to 20 to North Side. And I'm just nervous if we lock ourselves in a position that if we don't get the 10 based off of like $2 or $3 million, that we may not be doing anything, knowing that there's an urgent need for North St. Louis. And I agree, I do think some need to be in reserve, because I think what's unique about the Rams money, this is the only pot of money that we got that's making money for us. No other fund doing that. We're talking about a storm in Northside that's a $1 billion storm. So why not have an account that's going to make money for us to continue to pump into Northside? I'm just not sure of if we're going to actually get those funds committed to Northside, a majority of it, because of just the past history that has happened with the Rams bill when we try to get it done.
Yeah,
and with all,
Alderman.
And really quickly, with all due respect, we do work together. Like, you was a different spot, but I know you was like part of that like process of stripping it down to water, right? So and not allocating it to North St. Louis. So I just want to make sure, with people being intense and people not literally knowing where they're going to live, that we're not locking ourselves in a box. Well, I want us all to ultimately agree, and I think 10 does send a very strong number.
I'm happy to respond to that, Alderman, and I get that there might be some hesitation regarding that. There was, in fact, 8 aldermen who said, well, we can't seem to agree on these funds, so let's just do a water-only investment and punt on the uses for the rest of the dollars. I think that was the intent of the 8 or so aldermen that had it. This construct would have made that point moot. We would have only had 8 votes to say water only right now. We'll argue about the other uses later. We wouldn't have been able to have that conversation, nor would we have been able to put a stick in the spokes of the larger bill, because we only had 8 folks saying they agreed on water only for the time being, punt on the rest of the uses. And this forces collaboration. Now that those 8 aldermen who voted who wanted water only in the last cycle, we'd be dead in the water. No pun intended, or maybe it is. We'd be dead in the water because we'd only have 8 votes, and we know we wouldn't be able to get anywhere on Rams dollars until you get to 10. So it would force us all back to reach consensus and agree maybe with what the larger uses were there. So I thank you for an extension of my argument, Alderman. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I would say on the opposite side, now that we know we need to do something for North St. Louis, those 8, with you now being part of that, now we're like changing the goalpost and saying, well, let's change it, because, I think it's very clear everybody want to do something for North St. Louis now post-tornado. And there was an opportunity to do that last go round, and you and several alders only said, no, let's just do water. And now I think there is consensus post-tornado, whatever the number is. I don't think any of us disagree. I don't think you disagree either with that, Alder. But now we're saying let's get to a consensus on something that didn't have that opportunity the first time, which is probably even more critical to do this go round.
No, I think it's the opposite, Alderman. It's not allowing those 8 folks who only wanted a water investment to be able to collaborate, because 10 is the threshold now. So now we have to make sure we're at the table prioritizing North St. Louis and then water our other infrastructure needs. So suppose we're learning from that. This would allow us to make sure that we're not putting our nose at North St. Louis, needing to get to 10.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, Alderman. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 12th.
Mr. Alderman Oldenburg, I already told you that I was going to support it, but I just kind of want to follow up from the Alderwoman from the 7th. I have represented North St. Louis since 1991. Okay, this is 2026, right? I live in North St. Louis proudly. I can live pretty much where I want to live, on Lindo if I want to live on Lindo, okay? I want to live in North St. Louis. I have spent my career down here I took a pay cut from, what was it? $18,000 to leave the public defender's office to come here in 1991, which was the lowest paying legal job you could have, okay? But I still took an $18,000 pay cut. And I've done it full time because I believed in North St. Louis. So I appreciate the Alderman from the 7th talking about North St. Louis, but nobody has walked the walk and talked the talk like me. Nobody. Nobody. You ask the people in North St. Louis. I built new schools, firstly, new grocery stores, Walgreens, strip malls, housing. Spent my time, and my husband also spent our time, took our education that we got thanks to standing on other people's shoulders, which some of the young people down here that are Black don't seem to understand they're on my shoulders. I appreciate that I stood on other people's shoulders. That's why I was able to go to law school and do things that people, the generation before me, did not. So I would ask the Alderman from the 7th not to speak for North St. Louis because they do have elected officials that actually live there and have represented it, okay? So when I take you at your word, I do that not because you haven't compromised, because we had a compromise of $7.6 million. And I don't want to go all into it, but we worked that out and you kept your word. And I know it. That's why I trust you. It's some of these other people down here that don't keep their words. They talk about North St. Louis, but North St. Louis sent me back down here when I beat the mayor, the president, and the treasurer to be the most senior alder person, because that's what had been our rule. And they don't have a problem in stripping North St. Louis of their seniority. If you want to do something, then give North St. Louis back their senior alder person. Don't come down here and attack and then try to attack you, because I'm going to stand up and say, you have no right to talk about that. Be quiet, because the people in my ward don't like that you stripped my seniority. I don't care. I can live without it, but they don't like it. And they talk about it all the time. And it's not something that you did without being malice, okay? You don't know more than me. None of these people speaking from North St. Louis know more than me about North St. Louis, of the deals that were done over the years, okay? So when I say I trust you, it is from having a relationship with you, and you keeping your word, okay? And the reason why he's only telling part of the tale when he says, oh, and now you came to the Rams money and you only wanted to do water. Because the people who are talking had misused or cut up so much of the ARPA money, it's frightening. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to trust you, because I don't trust what they've done. Because everybody asks me about $37 million. That's all I ever hear is the ARPA money, the $37 million. That money was supposed to be set aside for Black businesses, and that was all of North St. Louis. That left approximately $463 million of ARPA funds. But it was so badly maligned because once the other three gentlemen got in trouble, we changed the whole ARPA fund. We took all the checks and balances out of it. I stood on this floor for an hour and spoke against changing the ARPA funds, because that $37 million was not going to hurt anybody, but it also left checks and balances that you had to bring the alderman into it. You had to say why you didn't agree with it or why you agree with it. And to this day, the ARPA funds are messed up because the very people that are speaking voted to change the bill, and they stripped seniority. So you cannot come and talk about checks and balances when you stripped them out of the ARPA funds. I don't know who has money from the ARPA funds in my ward now, except for when now things are going south, they're calling me and like, we need your letter of support. But you didn't let me do the letter of support in the first place, thanks to the alderman from the 14th, thanks to the alderwoman from the 7th, because you didn't understand checks and balances. So I do understand, besides having a law degree, I have a degree in management and a minor in accounting. So I do understand wanting to make sure you know where your money is. I also understand that the things that I just told you that I built in my community, schools, grocery stores, those are the things that are still there, and they served all the population, whether you were wealthy or poor, okay? And so we have put a lot of things into programs, and people got money, but I don't see anything. And certain parts of us in parts of our ward didn't see any of it. It's like if you own houses in North St. Louis, you don't deserve to have anything. If you're a working and middle class person in North St. Louis, according to some people down here, those are the neighborhoods that don't deserve to have anything. So you just give it to, we keep building low income housing and that kind of housing. And that's all that North St. Louis saw. We didn't see anything substantial. We didn't see that. And that is why I'm going to trust you. And I'm going to say that I have more standing than the other two young people that just was talking about what North St. Louis wants. Okay, I have that standing from getting elected over and over and over again, no matter who the opposition has been. And I have that standing from being out in my community and talking. And so when they talk about North St. Louis, they're not talking about the 12th Ward. I don't know what part that the 7th Ward Alderwoman represents. Oh, I do know. She doesn't represent any part of North St. Louis. She is not speaking for us. And the 14th Ward Alderman lives downtown. And really, traditionally, that was not North St. Louis. And if you ask the three women that represent North St. Louis, they will tell you that he has a small portion of it that didn't get really the damage that I did. My own house was damaged in the tornado. Half of my neighborhood that I lived in was damaged in the tornado. They want to see things that affect the people who are still there. If you got a house and then next to you is a LRA property and it's falling on your house, you want that property taken off of your house. You don't want that to ever happen again if there's a storm. So I do believe that we can come to a consensus. And I believe that because I've had a better working relationship with you than I have with the 14th and 7th. Okay? Because they would understand that what they're saying. Talk about the 7th Ward, talk about the 14th Ward, but don't speak for the 12th Ward, because the 12th Ward or the 20th Ward or the 1st, whichever one you want, has spoken loud and clear over and over again. And we're going to rise from this tornado. And I believe that a more planned basis that we consider long-term issues, and water is one of them. As I said before, I brought up water, and those people poo-pooed it at the time and didn't want to hear it. They weren't talking about water. They were talking about taking the ARPA funds and doing all these other things, which landed us in the newspaper with conflicts of interest. And to this day, I dare anybody to tell where is that other $463 million, because all we talk about is that $37 million, because this board made the mistake of changing a board bill that had all the checks and balances in it. So I'm going to go with a check and balance issue this time, because the people who did that and carried that bill were irresponsible. And I never hear them. Only Annie Schweitzer, when I brought up that she didn't support the water bill, said, well, I made a mistake. But I don't hear them getting up and saying, we made that mistake, so maybe we're going to look at a different way to do it. I didn't make that mistake. I didn't vote for that bill. It was a mess. It still is a mess. It's why we had problems. But I am going to support your amendment, because I think it might be a measured way to make sure that not only that we get some things that we can see done, but that we understand that all parts of the city are important. So because we didn't agree, and I'm the person, if you remember, that asked the Alderwoman from the 7th and the Alderwoman from the 13th to put their board bills on the informal calendar at the end. And that's how we come to this day. That was me in the middle of that. And I want to thank the Alderwoman from the 7th and the 13th, because they did. And we do need this money, okay? But they both did that, so I'll thank them for that. But we misused a lot of ARPA funds, and we didn't use them in the ways that we should. So I think we do need a measured approach. And I'm going to support you for that. And I don't think either one of them speaks for the people in my community. I'm speaking for the people in the 12th Ward.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Just for the sake of wanting to keep the conversation focused, I think whenever we talk about RAMS funds, for me, I always want to let the people that we represent and that we serve direct my comments. So I'm going to just stay focused on there. What I will say is that if we do vote this rule together, then I do have an amendment on the drive that I will propose next. That will be amendment proposal number 3 that would propose that we do a 2/3 vote majority for the allocation of any city funds. I think if we're saying that we want to make sure we have these conversations and we really want to have consensus before we put money out, for me, I would be okay with that if it was a rule for all of our procedures and not some, and if we made it as easy as possible for certain, again, why certain folks are in need, to not feel that way. I'm very honored to represent people who just are extremely compassionate people and really care deeply. And I know for them, a message that they have for me over and over again is that they want to see North City get money. I have residents that do not live in North City, but they feel very strongly that they had a tornado. They lost everything they had. They were disinvested before that. Had that happened to us, we would want you to be moving some money right now and talking about getting us funds. We understand that you won't move the bill, but I do have just a constituency that cares deeply about all of their residents, that feels that all of the city is connected, that some of it cannot fail while some of it left to thrive. And they've made it abundantly clear to me that they expect North City to get some funds, and they do not want me to see. They don't want to see me do anything that could look like it is harder for them to get funds. And I thank them for their compassion, and I'm honored to, represent that. And I think that's a part of what makes St. Louis look great. But I just do want to say that if this rule passed, then I will be proposing an amendment next that says that we make this the case for all city fund allocations. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 13th.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a comment. I keep hearing everybody talk about the Rams dollars and how we vote. And so the Alderwoman from the 7th, she knows the challenges we went through with the Rams dollars. When we thought we had something that was going to happen and somebody put a wrench in that. But nobody's talking about the ARPA dollars. And I keep asking the question, why are we focusing on something that it can build interest? And when we started with those RAM dollars, I said in the beginning, I said, I do not want it in that session. I would rather for this bill to be moved to the next session. And Alderwoman Tyus asked me on the floor, will I hold it? Now, if I hadn't held that bill, we had a tornado, where would we be? But people need to be real clear. That tornado money we released in the emergency for the tornado, the victims, the people in that part of the city that were impacted, that money has not left. So I don't know what they're talking about. We need money because that money has not left. And so we still got people over in that tornado area that never received dollars. CDA has not released money to those organizations to make sure that these people can be housed. So let's quit playing games. The money is not being released. I cannot see continuously dipping into that money, and you have ARPA dollars still on that table. I agree with Alderman Oldenburg. We need to have some kind of structure to ensure that people can get dollars. But people need to follow the dollars, and they have not hit the street. So don't keep telling me you need money, tornado victims, and you got the money from the Board of Aldermen, and the people have not got the money. The organizations haven't got the money. So where's the money? And so that's what I need people to understand. You have ARPA dollars still on the table. Why would you keep nitpicking at these RAM dollars and you have money that's sitting there? So I don't understand it. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm not as senior as Alderwoman Tyus because she can follow those dollars and she can follow those bills. Maybe I'm not good enough to see that, but I'm like Stevie Wonder. I can see that money's not on the street.
That's right. That's right.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
I want to just add a few things. Alderman from the 14th said that it was good to put some money aside because the Rams money grew and had finances and interest. We also got that from the ARPA dollars. I just said $15 million of interest from ARPA dollars went to the convention center. And Kara Spencer carried that bill as the 8th Ward Alderwoman. And that was one of the bills that gave them the additional. So we are building interest. I would dare to say I agree with the Alderwoman from the 13th. Every day almost I'm calling over, where's the money? Why is it taking so long? It's still sitting there. People who applied for the money 3.5 years ago, whenever we put it over there, they don't have the money mostly. Only a few political friends got the money. Other than that, the ARPA money is sitting there. It's not in the streets. It was not in the, because it wasn't structured to have any oversight. We, the Board of Aldermen, gave all of our power away with the changing of the board bill that came after the 3 gentlemen left, and then we changed it. It was a mistake. It was a mistake. It was a mistake. And I would like to correct the Alderwoman from the 13th. I talk about the ARPA money all the time. Every time somebody asks me about the $37 million, I said, what about the 463 approximately that's out there? Because the ARPA funds are continuing to get interest and while they're not being spent. So again, and I want to tell the Alderwoman from the 7th, I'm glad your people are so compassionate, but the people in my ward tell me we are so tired of people who don't live in our community speaking for us, who don't represent us, speaking for us, telling us what should happen when we're telling you what we want, and you going down there and saying what we want, and then people going up, standing up and saying, but I know what you want more. I never try to speak for the 7th Ward, and I'm compassionate for the people in the 7th Ward too, but I don't try to speak for them because they got a representative. So until you come over here and become the Alderwoman of the 12th, let me speak for the 12th Ward. We're going to be okay. We're going to rise like the phoenix. We're going to do what we need to. We're going to be okay. And we don't need pity from people saying, oh, I'm just those pathetic people over there. And this is what should happen. What we need is a comprehensive plan that I have put in place and I've been quietly working on. And we need it to be executed. And I said one of the things that you do is you get rid of all the vacant buildings. When you do that, you bring developers over and you have you get developers to come and do things. Now, contrary to what an alderman said a few weeks ago about nobody wants to do development in North St. Louis, just not true. I have a group of developers. In fact, I've brought several of them to the mayor's office and she's met with them. So there are developers that want to do things in North St. Louis. We have plans. You don't happen to know about it because you do not live in St. Louis. And I tend to meet with the people who live in my community. And I was elected to speak for them. And I'm telling you, I do trust that we will be able to work some things out. It's not just you, Mr. Oldenburg. It's some other aldermen down there that I trust, but it's not the ones that nickel and dime the pennies away and I don't see anything. I like to see things that are built. So when I drive by, I can say, look at that building. This is what we did. I'm not against social services. I'm for that too. But you do not give all the money to social services so that you don't have anything to show for it when you get that kind of money. And right now, literally, we have very little to show for what the kind of money. We've had almost $1 billion with interest between the Rams money and the ARPA funds. And yet I don't see anything really except for a few social programs and some money that should not have been spent on some things that I don't even want to go into. But mostly what the Alderwoman from the 13th says is that it has not been put out in the streets. And so it is better that we protect the Rams fund until we know, and we need to have a full accounting of every dollar of that ARPA fund, like yesterday, of where is it and why they don't put it out in the streets. The Alderwoman from the 13th and I have had, we both represent certain segments of Annie Malone. So I've had to call them and get on them. And so then they're like, okay, they're in the process now. But why does it take 3 years to be in the process to get some money that you applied for? I don't want to have to talk about all these problems, but we can. So the ARPA funds should be protected. And the more that they get up and argue against it, the more I'm for it. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'm sorry, not the ARPA funds, the Rams funds.
Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. With the Alderman for the second year for questions.
The Alderman from the 2nd yield to questions from the Alderman from the 14th.
Yes.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Alderman, I guess my question is, if we do move forward with your amendment, are you committed to, working with this board and ensuring that there's a significant amount that goes to North St. Louis and, actually showing up, picking up your phone call, or actually coming to work to have those conversations about how do we move that legislation forward?
Of course.
Okay. And I appreciate that because it is, sometimes it's hard to catch people when they actually aren't here. My ward was, as much as, I'm not going to talk about years and all of that, but the 14th ward was impacted by the tornado. However, some alders want to try to make it seem that the ward's blacker than others. The 14th ward, when it comes to College Hill, which touches the elevated 11 ward, was impacted. All the way down to St. Louis Place was impacted. And if we take this approach to make the process just, in my opinion, a little bit harder for those funds to get out the door for North St. Louis, I want to, make sure that there's a commitment that you will actually, show up and be present and keep your phone or your email open to response. Actually make sure that we can have that line of communication to get to an end goal and not just, have conversations on the Board of Aldermen meeting on Fridays, but actually everything in between that as well. I take that as a yes.
Yeah, I think you asked the same question again. My answer is still yes. I think I have open lines of communication and happy to work with this body on whatever improves the residents of the city of St. Louis's lives.
Thank you, Alderman.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 9th, are you up? Yes, you're recognized. Wasn't sure if you were walking or at the mic.
All right, is this microphone working? All right. Would the alderman from the 2nd yield?
The alderman from the 2nd yield questioning from the alderman from the 9th.
I will.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Alderman, I'd like to believe, and I do trust that this is being brought with the best of intentions. I think that we're definitely trying to make sure this is responsible.
Alderman, can you speak into the mic a little closer?
Yeah.
Maybe you need to raise it a little bit. It's hard to hear you.
I'll work on that. Yeah, it is. All right, let's try that again. Alderman, what I was saying is I think that you're coming at this with good intentions. I think the intent is to make sure that we spend this money responsibly. Alderman from the 12th, I hear you in saying that we want to make sure we actually see the result out on the street, that, how we handle the ARPA money, how we've proceeded as a city is not being felt by people right now, and that leads to distrust in government. And I think if I'm going to speak to the general feeling, especially over the debate over this amendment, it is a debate about a lack of trust and something that we need to do in order to make sure that we are all working together and I believe all trying to represent our wards and making sure this money is well spent is to trust each other a little bit, just a little bit, to be able to go far enough that we understand that we're all at least advocating in a way that we believe is best for our city. And so I don't want to go into this assuming ill intent, but speaking of how the debate went last time we really circled up around Rams money, Alderman, my question for you is, when you were in support of the amendment to dial it down just to water, were you in support of that because you didn't want to send money to North City?
No. I was in support of that because it felt like that might have been the one use in the conversation that folks that a simple majority of folks could agree on.
So I think the reason I ask you that question is just that I think when we think about how we're voting, sometimes people assume our intentions, but very much in that case, it was more about the programming of the rest of the money. At least I can say for myself, my issue was with the programming of the rest of the money. And similar to yourself, I believed that the only piece that we could agree was programmed well was the money for water, and the need was there and urgent at the time. And I regret that we weren't able to pass anything, because I think that just led to more distrust. But from what I've heard from you today, I think our intention is still to make sure money goes to especially tornado relief, and making sure that it goes towards tornado relief in an impactful way. Is that your intention as well?
Yes.
And right now I'm gonna, and that's my questions for you, Alderman. Thank you. So.
Sure.
As a member of the Budget Committee, for the past year, we've been having hearings over how the $30 or so million that we allocated to the Office of Recovery has been spent. And what we've seen month after month as the Office of Recovery comes and updates us is that they've spent a lot of time recommending, not just recommending, setting up new programs to do things like home repair, to do things like infrastructure repair. A lot of our old systems, like the Healthy Home Repair Program, were not set up for this kind of massive event. And typically, FEMA is responsible for a lot of these heavy lifts that our Office of the Recovery then had to step in and create, really from scratch, some new systems to get these programs set up and running. Now, we are getting an idea through the applications we received who is in need of that money. We're parsing through that information and figuring out exactly who is eligible. We've had elements of, I don't know what to call it other than maybe some misintended people like trying to get money that maybe bought their house after the tornado. And so they have to parse through that to make sure that we're giving money to people who really are occupying the homes and need it. We had a lot of vacant properties that were hit whose owners have been non-responsive as we tried to reach out and work with them. There's just enormous challenges with this tornado recovery effort. And so as we're moving forward, I think it's going to be really important how we budget this RAMS money to be as effective as possible. And I want to make sure it goes towards the programs that we've just spent the last year setting up. Otherwise, we're just going to end up spending a lot more of it on overhead. If we are committing today to work together and make sure that we can find a solution that we all agree with, I hope we can all recognize just exactly what this money can pay for. Unlike the ARPA money, which had restrictions in many ways, had to be allocated by a certain date, has to be spent by a certain date, this RAMS money is as close to free money as we can get in this city. It can be spent on anything. It has no restrictions. We won it from the NFL, and it is supposed to replace the revenue lost from losing an NFL team, but obviously it's not going to do that. And I hesitate to even use words like transformational, because it's not even a quarter of our city's annual operating budget. I think that part of this distrust we keep building is that we keep referring to this money as if it is a magical fix-all to all of St. Louis's problems. Over the last 3 years that I've been elected, I've heard endless proposals for how this money can be spent, from the absurd to the absolutely needed. And it does not make this job any easier on how to spend this money. But moving forward, I hope that we can work together honestly and being very forthwith with people, being very even frank if we have to be about what this money can do and what it can't do. Because even though it has no restrictions, we do still have to operate within reality, and $250 million is not enough to fix decades of disinvestment in North City. It won't even repair 6 complete blocks, I'd say. That's how little money this is. So I don't want to get in a situation where we promise people the world and then we can't even get repair in every neighborhood that was impacted. As someone who represents an impacted ward, I hear a lot of falsehoods already being spread about how the city has helped the Central West End. I want to be clear, the city hasn't really helped the Central West End. The money you see being spent is private money. That's money that the special business districts or the community improvement districts in the area, which come from local taxes, that's how that money's being spent. So if you see sidewalk getting repaired or you see trees being replanted, that's because those citizens have taken it upon themselves to pay for those things. And I'd also note that if you go drive down those streets right now, you'll see homes that are still under repair, still have tarps on their roofs. It's not true that we're making a faster recovery. It takes a long time to rebuild a house. And so it is a situation where I still have residents in my ward who are not living in their house right now. They're living somewhere else because their house isn't ready to move back into. And I know there are people all over the city in that situation. I know there are people who are even living in their broken homes, hoping for money to repair it. And I don't want to have this conversation go to a place where we make false promises. I don't want to overrepresent what we're capable of. If you think that this amendment will get us to a place where people can have trust that what the Board of Aldermen is doing is actually going to make a difference, then I'm in favor of it. But if this makes it harder to spend the money that we have already struggled to spend, then I'm not in favor of it. And I think that is, I'm honestly standing here right now not sure which way to vote on this, because I do hear what both sides are saying. But if anyone wants to speak to how they think we can go forward and make sure that we all agree on what's being done, make sure that what we're doing is effective, that we're being honest with people about what's possible, if we can commit to that, then I think we can move forward today. But what I don't want this to turn into is a debate on how we should spend the Rams money today, because I don't think we're going to settle that today. And I'll be honest, I just had to cancel my meeting with the mayor's office to discuss the Rams bill because this meeting is running long. So the irony right there is that we're not having communication because we're standing here arguing about this. So Alderman, I don't know if you want to speak to the amendment anymore, but those are my concerns. And I yield back. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, then Alderman from the second, you are recognized to close on the amendment, and there's been a request for roll call.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, this is nothing sinister or diabolical with my intentions here. I honestly think it's an awesome responsibility to represent the public in the search of public virtue. I do believe getting to a threshold of 2/3 is important. While this may not be transformative money in some people's minds and eyes, and it's up for debate, it is an incredible responsibility to get it right. Because it is a seed of money where we can grow a much larger harvest of economic development and revenue that the city desperately needs and is screaming out for. It is a data point that says this is an important vote, and it forces compromise, and everyone can come to the table with their particular use, having some power and some wherewithal, because they know they have to compromise on some of it to get to 10 votes with what is very important decisions ahead on the actual uses. I will conclude and renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the second, seconded by the Alderman from the fourth, that we adopt amendment number 1 to resolution number 1. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devote. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Cox-Antwi. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
No.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich. President Green.
No.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Velasquez.
No.
Alderwoman Cox Antwi.
Who's sponsored?
Alderman Browning. Alderman Aldrich.
You can't.
Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Cox Antwi. Alderman Aldrich. Seven aye votes, 7 noes.
By your vote, you failed to sustain the motion from the alderman from the 2nd. Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized again on resolution number 1.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I move to adopt amendment number 2 to resolution number 1.
Is there a second? It's been moved by the alderman from the 14th, seconded by the alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt amendment number 2 to resolution number 1. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This just adds to the end of rule number 69 at the end of that language where it says no bill or resolution shall be placed on the consent calendar automatically after being voted out of committee unless it receives unanimous support from all committee members present and voting along with a due pass recommendation from the committee from which it was last reported. There has been times that I have seen where a bill has come out of committee either with everyone voting in favor and was not on the consent, which somebody potentially could have pulled it off. But I've also seen bills that have come out of committee where there was a vote that was either present or against not voting in the affirmative, and the bill still landed on the consent calendar. So this is just to be very clear that only way it can be on the consent if it comes with unanimous support, and does not stop anybody from pulling it off, but it makes a clear process that to be honest, either from your office, Madam President, or the clerk cannot automatically put a bill on consent, even if somebody voted against it, but it has to have unanimous support on it. And with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, then it's been moved by the alderman from the 14th, seconded by the alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt amendment number 2 to resolution number 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 14th, you are now recognized on resolution number 1 as amended.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I renew my motion on resolution 1 as amended.
Is there any further discussion on resolution number 1 as amended? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I oppose resolution number 1 for many of the reasons I've said in past sessions. One of them is putting people in charge of committees who have no business being in charge of them, stripping seniority. I will continue to oppose that, and I will request a roll call vote.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, then it's been moved by the alderman from the 14th, seconded by the alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt resolution number 1 as amended. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Ryan, Alderman Devoti, Alderwoman Velasquez, Alderwoman Sanye, Alderwoman Cox Antwi, Alderman Browning, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Tyus,
No.
Alderwoman Boyd,
No.
Alderman Aldrich, President Green,
Aye.
Alderwoman Cox Antwi, 11 aye votes, 3 noes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 14th to adopt resolution number 1 as amended.
Resolution number 2, introduced by President Green and Alderman Browning, hiring of staff.
Alderman from the 9th, you are recognized on resolution number 2.
Thank you. I move that we adopt resolution number 2.
First, you need to ask for unanimous consent.
I request unanimous consent.
Hearing no objection, Alderman, you may proceed with adoption.
Thank you. I move that we adopt resolution number 2.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderperson from the 1st, that we adopt resolution number 2. Alderman, you may proceed.
This is a simple resolution, just hiring the staff for the year, and you'll see a lot of familiar names on this list, as well as a couple vacant positions due to some recent moving around. But I think we all appreciate all these people for the work they do, so we'd like to rehire them.
Any further discussion? Sorry, pausing for 1 second. Okay, with that, because we are discussing the hiring of staff, we are going to go into a quick closed session to discuss.
I think we need a motion for that, so I move
Yes,
that
we
we go
do.
into closed session pursuant to, I don't have the rule in front of me, but to discuss personnel matters.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st, that we go into closed.
Order, Madam. We need the second and.
So
are correct.
I would remove my motion to adopt resolution 2.
Okay,
You're fine.
And I
Madam-
make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to Missouri Statute 262.010, subsections 1 and 12.
Nicely
okay.
done.
It has been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we go into closed session. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer, Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderman Cone, Alderman Narayan, Alderman Devoti, Alderwoman Velasquez, Alderwoman Sanye, Alderwoman Cox Antwi, Alderman Browning, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Tyus,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich, President Green,
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye, Alderwoman Cox Antwi, 14 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. STLTV, if you could please place us in closed session. And if anybody who is not a member of the Board of Aldermen or our clerk, Sharita, please exit the chambers. And we are back. Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized on resolution 3.
Move for unanimous consent on resolution number 3.
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to perfect resolution number 3.
Adopt.
Adopt resolution number 3.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution number 3. Is there any discussion?
I do.
Alderwoman from the 12th.
Where are we with, we still wasting paper? I know we cut it to 15 journals, but where are we with, is it because, and I'm wanting to think that it's because it's in the charter, just going to digital journals. I think that is such a waste of paper.
Is that for me, Alderlady? Are you asking me to yield or?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'll ask if the 14th ward will yield.
The Alderman
talking
from the
out loud.
14th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 12th.
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Alderman, we used to print more than 15 copies. We cut back to 15 copies. But is there any thought that we could go to digital at any time soon and stop destroying trees?
Yes, ma'am. And I knew you was going to ask that question. I think since I've been carrying the resolution since 23, you have asked this question and I've said the same thing. And then the next session come, you ask the question, I say the same thing. And no, it is in charter that we have to print some. But I literally just, because I knew you was going to ask, I talked with some staff members to make sure that as we transition with now having hopefully full staff very soon at the board, that we can actually also make these digital. But I do think we at least have to print like one or something per the charter. But I totally agree. Digital is the way to go and save the paper.
Well, then could I make a friendly amendment and still not, and say that we not say we print 15? It says a no event to exceed 15 copies. Okay, so that's fine. So it could be under 15 copies because I'm still getting them. And I'm one of the people that do not want them. I really want to have the access on digital. So long as it says not to exceed 15, we can cut back to 1 or 2 if we get a process that we can make them digital. All right, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution number 3. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution number 4, introduced by President Green and Alderman Cone, automatic and mailing expense.
Alderman from the 3rd, you're recognized on the first reading, resolution number 4.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask for unanimous consent on resolution number 4.
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we adopt resolution number 4.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt resolution number 4. Alderman, you
Thank you. This resolution is pertaining to the expense accounts for alderpersons, and I would ask for folks' favorable consideration.
Is there any discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt resolution number 4. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
Resolution number 5, introduced by President Green and Alderwoman Hubbard. Last day for introduction of board bills.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on resolution number 5.
I ask for unanimous consent on resolution number 5.
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
I move for the adoption of resolution number 5.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt resolution number 5. And Alderwoman, I'm not seeing you on the screen right now. Is your camera on? There we go. Is there any discussion on resolution number 5?
Point of order. Point of order. She has to make her motion as per yours. She has to restate her motion and because she was not on the screen.
Okay. Alderwoman from the 10th, can you please restate your motion? To move for the
adopt resolution number 5.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt resolution number 5. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution number 6, introduced by President Green and Alderwoman Velasquez, conflict of interest disclosure.
Alderwoman from the 6th, you are recognized on resolution number 6.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask for unanimous consent for Resolution 6.
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
Thank you. I move to adopt Resolution 6.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt resolution number 6. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
No, I have those.
Second reading, resolutions, committee reports, and adoptions.
Report from the Personnel Committee.
We can dispense with line item 21, courtesy resolutions.
We have none.
Can dispense with line item 22, miscellaneous and unfinished business.
We have none.
Can dispense with line item 23, announcements.
Wednesday, April 22nd, we have none. Thursday, April 23rd, 2026, Personnel and Administration Committee in the Kennedy Room at 11 a.m.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Well, I do just quickly want to say before we, sorry, Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. And just a personal point of privilege for announcements this morning or this afternoon. Keep thinking that. This is more than likely the last meeting that President Green will be presiding over before she becomes Mama Green and having her baby, which is currently scheduled for next week.
Yes.
And so I just want to thank you for your leadership as you're going through this new journey in motherhood. And, I think we can all agree that we're very excited for your next chapter as being a new mother, and look forward to working with your team and your staff and the colleagues down here to carry the lantern as you navigate those waters yourself. So thank you, President Green, and good luck. And we can't wait to meet the new baby.
Thank you, Thank you, Alderman Cohn, and thank you for stepping up and helping to perform the duties while I am transitioning to some other duties in life for a little bit. So, any other announcements? Seeing none, then Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'd like to make a motion that we excuse the Alderwoman from.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we excuse the Alderwoman from the 8th for necessary absence. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized on the motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn until May 1st, 2026.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we adjourn until Friday, May 1st, 2026 in the Board of Aldermen chambers. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.